The NASCAR Xfinity Series most winningest driver is making a return. Let's talk about how important that could be for Kyle Busch's 2023 NASCAR season. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about the news that came out today. Kyle Busch is racing in the Xfinity Series once again, the all-time winningest driver, 102 NASCAR Xfinity Series wins, the 2008 champion of the series. Let's talk about it, and let's talk about how big this could be for Kyle Busch's upcoming NASCAR Cup season. I think this could play a big role in that as well. So let's go ahead and kind of talk about the news. So earlier this morning, Kyle Busch announced that he is back for the NASCAR Xfinity Series season. He's going to be running some races. And then that was kind of when the speculation started. What will it be? Will it be the number 3 car for RCR? I think everybody kind of thought it would be for Richard Childress Racing. Then a few minutes later, about 20, 30 minutes later, no, it will be Kaulig Racing. Kyle Busch will drive the number 10 Kaulig Chevrolet for the NASCAR Xfinity Series for 5 races this year. That's the max amount that he's allowed to run being a full-time Cup driver. So I think it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see what Kyle Busch can bring to the table. I think he's expecting to win 5 races this year, 4 at the least, and that's what his expectations are going to be in the Xfinity Series upcoming this year. I'm excited to see him back. It's been a whole year, 2022. He didn't race any. He won all 5 of his Xfinity starts back in 2021, and that was exciting. And like I said, he is the all-time winningest driver in the Xfinity Series as well. So he's definitely going to be the class of the field. I'm excited for this for a couple of reasons. I'm going to talk about what this could mean for Kyle Busch's season and his Cup season coming up in just a little bit. We're going to look at the races that he's going to be racing. But I think that this is important for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. On this show, I don't talk a whole lot about the Xfinity Series itself, but I do like Kyle Busch and these Cup drivers racing in the Xfinity Series for a couple of reasons. For one, obviously, I'm going to try to catch every Xfinity race that Kyle Busch is in. I don't know if that'll be possible, but, you know, with the Cup drivers in it, I like watching the Cup drivers, the drivers I'm more familiar seeing. Obviously, last year was a bit different because we had a great Xfinity lineup, but this year in the Xfinity Series, there's no driver I'm really extremely eager to see. I'm not trying to down-talk them. I think they're all extremely talented, but with the Cup drivers and the more famous drivers, the more popular drivers racing in the Xfinity Series, I think that makes it more exciting to an extent. Maybe you can disagree with me. Maybe it just makes it more boring because they typically dominate the race. But I always like seeing, even back in the day, I always liked seeing your Cup drivers racing the Xfinity Series. Then NASCAR lowered that down. They said you can't race but 5 races a year if you have experience in the NASCAR Cup Series. So they really limited that number. But I've always liked the Cup drivers in the Xfinity Series. But even more so, I think those Cup drivers raise the bar in the Xfinity Series, and you see this with Kyle Busch in the trucks and other Cup drivers in the trucks. I know Chase Elliott will be racing at Daytona in the trucks this year in just a couple of days now, so that'll obviously raise the bar for that race. When you have those Cup drivers, those championship drivers in the Xfinity Series, that raises the bar. What can these teams do to have to beat Kyle Busch? And we saw it the last few years. We didn't see it in 2021, but 2020, 2019, we saw those drivers beat Kyle Busch. They raised the bar to beat him. And I think if you have these Cup drivers out there, the other teams are thinking, oh me, we got to find a way to try to beat these guys. We gotta excel our capabilities to try to beat Kyle Busch, to try to beat these Xfinity stars. And that's what creates great moments, like Darlington at 2020 when Kyle Busch lost to Chase Briscoe. That was absolutely insane. That was a great win for Chase Briscoe to beat one of the best there is, Kyle Busch. And you see that less and less. And maybe it's just the perfect amount, but it's just something I like to see. I think it raises the bar for the teams in the Xfinity Series. And maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it shouldn't raise the bar. Maybe their bar should be set lower. But I just think it's exciting. I think it makes them have to be more competitive, and it ups their game in a way, and maybe even prepares them more for the Cup Series, the drivers themselves. So just kind of something I wanted to mention there about the Xfinity Series itself. But let's talk about what this means for Kyle Busch. So I was a bit surprised that he's racing for Kaulig Racing instead of RCR. And, you know, if you remember back last year, Kyle Busch, when he was a free agent, we didn't know if he was going to go back to Joe Gibbs or to Chevrolet. Kaulig was really at the top of the list of teams that we thought he would go to. That was a serious discussion amongst fans. That was a big rumor. Kyle Busch going to Kaulig Racing to drive full-time next season. As we know now, that didn't happen. He went to RCR, which is still a Chevrolet team. So Kyle Busch working with Kaulig at Chevrolet, I think that's good. Those two are probably going to be sharing some information, sharing some data. Obviously, those two teams won't share all the information, but it's good to see that those two organizations are somewhat working together. That could help excel both of those teams. That could help Kaulig run better and Kyle Busch over at RCR run better, which is exciting. And obviously Austin Dillon at RCR. Both of those teams working together, both of those Chevrolet teams working together. That could be dangerous for some of the other teams out in the field, and they definitely need to keep an eye on that. But I want to talk about how big this could be for Kyle Busch's upcoming NASCAR Cup season. NASCAR has limited track time for these new next-gen cars a ton. NASCAR Cup has not had a ton of practice over the last few years. Obviously, we go back to 2020 when COVID hit. NASCAR eliminated all practice for almost every race. That continued into 2021 as the virus was still lingering around. NASCAR didn't want drivers at the track, they wanted drivers at the track the least amount of time possible, the least amount of time needed. So there was no practice in 2021. 2022 came along. We decided to give them back practice for the next gen car, but I think it's going to be like 15 minutes a driver. That's not a whole lot of track time to learn the race car, to learn the race track. And I know the next gen cars are really different from these Xfinity cars, but we still see when drivers race many races a week. We can go back to Kyle Larson in 2021. We can go back to many other examples of this. When you see drivers getting more track time, whether that's dirt racing, whether that's the Xfinity Series, the Truck Series, they tend to run better on Sundays. And I think that could be what you could see with Kyle Busch. So let's take a look. Bob Pockets reported here the races he's racing. I like how they're all kind of spread out here. So you have Las Vegas will be the first race he runs. I think that's the third race of the year. And then, of course, Phoenix, which will be the fourth race of the year, I believe. So back-to-back weeks there. That's when he could learn some valuable information going into these two races. Then Charlotte on Memorial Day weekend. I believe that's the Saturday before the Coca-Cola 600. Then Watkins Glen in the summer, and then Darlington the day before the Southern 500 in the fall or in the late summer. On Labor Day weekend. I like how that's kind of spread out a little bit, trying to get the most out of this that he can and learn the most about the cars and the tracks that he can. I think this could really help Kyle Busch's season. If you remember Kyle Busch back in 2021 when he won those 5 Xfinity races, not only does that boost his confidence, that helped him do better. He had a really good 2021 season. I know he didn't get a whole lot of wins. He only got 2 wins that year, which is not really great for Kyle Busch standards, but on paper, that was a really good season. Almost made it into the championship 4 if he'd have run better at Martinsville that last race, if he'd have been able to get the win at Martinsville, which he was in contention to do, that last race, that second to last race, he would have been in the championship 4. So 2021, on the stat sheet at least, was a pretty good season for Kyle Busch, and I think you could see that in 2023. Track time tends to be very valuable. We're all starting to see this, especially for Kyle Busch. Ever since they cut the practice down, we saw his results start to slip in 2020. His results were not that good. He's only got 4 wins over the last 3 seasons, which in 2019, Kyle Busch got 5 wins plus a championship. So I'm just saying, more track time for Kyle Busch. This could be a really dangerous Kyle Busch coming up. I know Kyle Busch said he's not going to run any more Xfinity races once he hit the 100th win. He obviously got 102 after 2021, but I'm excited to see Kyle Busch back in the Xfinity Series. I think this could be dangerous for everybody in the field. I think everyone in the field right now, if we just want to talk about Kyle Busch for a minute, I think every other driver in the field right now is thinking, oh me, because this sounds like Kyle Busch is back. If you watched him in 2022, it did not seem like Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch would have an accident. It seemed like he never recovered. We saw it a few weeks ago in the Clash, or a few days ago in the Clash, where Kyle Busch got turned, was the only driver that could pass on the high side, did it all the way to get into the top 3 with just a few laps left in the Clash. That is the Kyle Busch I think we're all used to seeing. That is fun to watch. Kyle Busch is exceptionally fun to watch. And I think he could be back. I know it's still early. I know we haven't even started the next season with the Daytona 500. But just the way Kyle Busch is acting, the way he sounds in the press room, him coming back to the Xfinity Series, just seems like just kind of bringing back the Kyle Busch that I remember from a few years ago. And it'll be exciting to see what he can do this year with Richard Childress Racing. But that's it. That's really all I wanted to talk about today. I know it was kind of a quick video, but I think I wanted to just get to the point in this one. I'm excited. Obviously, tune back in February 15th. I'll do a review on Daytona 500 qualifying. We'll have a couple of drivers trying to make it in on qualifying time into the 500. Jimmy Johnson will be trying to do that for the Daytona 500 in just a couple of days, less than a week away. And next week is Daytona week, so we have qualifying, the duels, and all that exciting stuff, so I appreciate it. Obviously, like and subscribe if you like the video. It means a whole lot to me. And, of course, about Kyle Busch, once again returning to the Xfinity Series, Let's get rowdy.